Thank you so much. I'm from South Carolina, and you come together so much better. Please don't tell them I said that. Please don't tell them I said that. But it is my pleasure, my honor to be with you in the Mid-South this evening. Second to Charleston, South Carolina, this is my absolute favorite place. Please don't tell them I said that either. I am just overwhelmed today. So much history in this place. So much history in this place. And speaking of history, there is a local icon that means the world to you and means so much to me. He would not remember this, but several years ago when I was less gray and had less of me, this gentleman came to me on Spring Street in Charleston, South Carolina, in the local offices of the NAACP, and said, "Young lady, the NAACP needs you. We need you to volunteer for AXO. It's a program for young people highlighting the accomplishments of very intelligent young African-American, at the time mostly African-American people, young kids, and it just does not get enough attention, and we want to jumpstart that here in South Carolina." And being, my father would tell you, being the polite person that I am, I said, "Yes, sir," and did not quite get to that. Years later, he would be proud to know that I was one of the youngest persons to actually chair the NAACP Freedom Fund banquet in my home city. And that was a successful year at a time when things were a little tense in South Carolina. Always on time. And who would know some 27 years after he made history that the person standing before you would also make history? And but for the hard work, the dedication of this gentleman, who I could not think of a better way to start a program, if not for his hard works and his commitment to public service, I would not be here and the rest of us would not be here. Please join me in welcoming an icon, an American hero, Dr. Benjamin Hooks.
I'm not going to read all that, don't get scared.
Okay.
And even if you do, I'll still wait.
I'm kind of dressed up, man.
Oh, absolutely. Respect that for us, sir.
Took us 3 hours to get ready. All right. Thank you so very much. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, to the commissioners who are here, Clyburn and Corps, to the representatives of our city and state. I'm honored to be here tonight to welcome you to Memphis for the Federal Communications Commission Broadband Field Hearing on Digital Inclusion. As some of you may know, ancient history, I served as a Federal Communications Commissioner from 1972 until 1977. And indeed, it was a time of change. When I went to the commission, there were 900 television stations in America. Not a single one was owned by blacks. Not a single station manager. Very few women as anchors, even at the local level, are men. Quite different today. And at that point, there were some 9,000 radio stations. None of them were owned by black people, except 13, a magic number, 13. And so, working with the other commissioners, I had the privilege of helping to get Howard University to be the first Negro institution to own a television station. I think that deserves a little hand because those other 6 commissioners worked with us. We could not have done it without them. Later, we sold the station to a group in New York. And a few days ago, they sold it for some $40 million. Help me, Lord. We're here tonight because broadband access and broadband adoption are critical to full civic participation in today's society. Broadband is becoming a basic necessity. It is no longer a luxury. Slow-speed internet access no longer suffices. Broadband internet shapes our today and our tomorrow. There are so many ways in which broadband touches our lives. Job searches, job applications, driver's license renewal, classroom instruction, care through 12, distance learning for college students, submission of Social Security application forms. And so we're pleased to have the FCC, great institution, brother. Great institution, FCC. You know, people don't recognize it. Every time you open your garage, that's FCC. Amen. Every time you pick up a television, it's FCC. Every time your microwave doesn't work, that's FCC. Oh, talk to me about it. 10 million people applied for broadband licenses, and we were 8 million behind, FCC. And the Congress refused to give us the money to process them and then cussed us out because we didn't process. But amen, we carried on. And to have been associated with so many very fine people has been a joy and a pleasure. These points, and I'm through. Broadband is vital because it can improve the quality of life for every citizen. Broadband is a great enabler of the 21st century. Broadband can enable Memphians and citizens throughout this nation with greater economic opportunity for jobs, health care, and educational opportunities. Broadband can spur innovation that will keep our city and our nation competitive and provide a level of civic and political empowerment that is second to none. Delivering, my brothers and my sisters, broadband to every American is key to maintaining our economic leadership and our competitiveness in the 21st century. But there has to be a road map for getting there. There's a story told of the man who asked at a filling station how would he get to Gatlin from the station. And the boy said, if I were you, I'd go and turn at the first block left. No, that won't do it. He said, in fact, I would turn at the first block right. He said, wait a minute, mister. You just can't get there from here. And so many times we've given up and said we can't get there from here. But Obama, being president, proves we can get there from here. Thank you, and God bless you. Thank you again.
Dr. Hooks, on behalf of your current colleagues, because we're always colleagues, you're always a commissioner at the Federal Communications Commission, allow me to present to you this token, this beautiful token that hopefully this night, when you look at this, you will remember us this night and always remember your years of service.
Nothing could be finer than to be in South Carolina in the morning.
Gotta love it, gotta love it. Only in Memphis.
I may have to leave before it's over. Please don't take that as an insult, but because of medicine and this and another, I may have to leave before. Thank you.
Thank you. Your presence is always here with us. Before we get started with our panelists this evening, I'd like to recognize just a few persons, and as they come in, we will recognize others. This evening could not be possible but for the help of Mr. Whit Anderson, President of the Tennessee Broadcasters Association, and his many members who are in the audience. Mr. Anderson and your fellow broadcasters who really helped us get the word out. Will you raise your hands, including one broadcaster from formerly of Columbia, South Carolina, my second hometown. Thank you very much. Ms. Annie Reed and Sarah Cowell at the Tennessee Regulatory Authority for helping us to bring this to you this evening. And of course, the President, Beverly Robertson, and all of the staff of the National Civil Rights Museum. Thank you so much for all of your help. I just keep hearing how helpful you have been and how gracious you've been. And of course, we wouldn't expect anything else from the Mid-South. There are several local officials here. State Representative Carol Camper, State Representative Larry Miller, County Commissioner James Harvey, and staff members of Senators Bob Coker, Senator Lamar Alexander, and Congressman Stephen Cohen. Would you please stand for me so people will know that you're here? Thank you so much. Thank you. Are there other local officials before we get started that I need to identify? Mayor Ford. Oh, great. Mr. Mayor? Would you come forward? Thank you so much. And now we'll hear from our mayor.
But this is about much more than social networking. It's certainly about more than how many fans AC Wharton has at any given moment. This is about connection. In Memphis, Tennessee right now, too many children cannot connect to the resources they need for study and research. They cannot connect to their ambitions, to the colleges and financial aid applications that they need to achieve. Too many adults do not have the computer skills or internet access to connect to better jobs or better homes for their families. They cannot do many of the simple online tasks, checking the weather, paying their bills, finding their voting location, or signing up for a crime alert on their block. Those things that we take for granted. Of course, I'm not talking about everyone in Memphis. I'm talking about the lower income individuals in our community. I'm talking about those Memphians on the far side of the digital divide. For some in Memphis, there is abundant opportunity, access, and connection. For scores of others, there is none. Nothing threatens our dream of one Memphis more than resolving this sad, needless inequality. That is why my office is sincerely and strongly committed to doing whatever we can to expand affordable broadband throughout all of Memphis. Likewise, we call for an equal commitment to comprehensive computer training and education. Access to the web must be matched by an understanding for using it safely and appropriately. It is so appropriate that we are gathered tonight in an institution dedicated to the fight for civil rights and basic freedoms. This museum's chairman, Benjamin Hooks, Dr. Hooks, we love you, Jr., was the very first black FCC commissioner. As Reverend Hooks knows, freedom is a product of education, of knowledge, of opportunity, of connection. We too often talk about internet access as a bridge across the digital divide. For Memphis, the internet must be a river as well as a bridge, flowing with commerce and knowledge. The time has come for the United States Congress, the FCC, and the local government to do whatever we can to bring more people of all races, ages, and economic status to this river. The future will not wait. Thank you. Good night.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Well done, well done, well done.
Hi, I'm Julius Janikowski, the chairman of the Federal Communications Commission, and I'm so glad that the Commission is holding this hearing on broadband in Memphis, Tennessee. And I thank my colleagues for being there at this important hearing on this important topic. The topic is broadband, high-speed internet. We have the obligation at the FCC to draft a national broadband plan. Congress and the President tasked us with developing a plan to ensure that all Americans have access to broadband. Why is this so important? For a few reasons. First, It's about jobs. Broadband, our broadband infrastructure, the major infrastructure challenge of our generation, in my view, will be a critical platform for job creation for the United States in the 21st century, essential for finding jobs in many, many places for many, many jobs. If you don't have access to the internet, you can't find a job. And job training, too, making sure that people have the skills that they need to participate in a 21st century economy. Broadband is essential also to advance important common national goals around education, healthcare, clean energy, public safety, and I'm sure all these topics will be discussed at the hearing tonight. I'm so glad that this is happening because it's essential that the FCC develop this plan not just in rooms in Washington, but through reaching out to people all over the country as we've been doing. And what better place to do so than in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm very glad that this hearing is occurring. I encourage all of you to participate vibrantly. What you don't have an opportunity to ask at the hearing today, you can reach us through broadband.gov. You'll get other information about this at the hearing itself. I'd like to thank my colleagues again for participating directly in this hearing and the terrific FCC staff that work so hard to organize these hearings. Thank you very much, and thank you for your participation.
Thank you. At the FCC, we have protocols, so to speak, and so we do things in order of seniority. I would say age before beauty, but that's not quite right. But anyway, I would like to introduce to you, and I think you might have his bio in your packets, our former acting chair of the FCC, and my colleague who has just been incredible. I think he's been on the FCC for 6 years?
8.5.
8.5, okay. I was gone for a little while, apparently. I'm sorry. 8.5 years. Incredible. A supporter of these efforts, Commissioner Michael Copps.
Thank you. Do not worry, I'm not going to give a speech, and I certainly wouldn't try to follow Dr. Hook's act here. That was incredible. I just want to say how happy I am to be back in Memphis. I was here a couple of years ago for the Media Reform Conference, and we're still working, Dr. Hooks, on the media reform that you started, and Mignon and I are still trying to do something about minority and female ownership of radio stations and TV stations, because we still got a long way to go there, too. That's not what we're here primarily to talk about tonight, but it's a huge priority. It has been of mine for 8 years. The only thing I really want to say tonight, it's just being back here is moving because I had an opportunity to go through this beautiful museum, and I know Dr. Hooks was very active in it, and I think chairs the board of directors. Just going through here and being a part of that history can only be described really as a moving experience, and I think it's almost 42 years ago now since that murderous afternoon, but just to see the people of Memphis take the murder and the mourning and turn it into something historical and inspirational is inspirational to me. I believe that universal access to broadband needs to be seen as a civil right. Not too many people have talked about it that way, but I don't think you can really look at it in the final analysis in any other way, because without access to this conduit through which we're all going to communicate, and in 15 or 20 years we'll probably all be on the internet, the broadcast stations and everything else, we have all got to have access to that infrastructure. It is the infrastructure of our time, as Chairman Janikowski said there, just like earlier on was roads and highways and railroads and all that. Now it's the information highway. If we're not on it, there's not going to be opportunity. You don't get a job when 77% of the Fortune 500 companies are only recruiting online. Don't bother sending that envelope in because nobody's going to look at it with a resume in it. You've got to be online. So when we're here talking about broadband, it's not like we're talking some kind of technology geek or whatever. It's the great enabler. That was the term you just used, and that's a wonderful way to look at it. None of the problems that this country faces right now, whether it's the creation of jobs, improving our health care via being able to have our health records go where we go and telemedicine, doing something about energy dependence with smart grids, whether improving our education, whether opening the doors of equal opportunity. Every one of those problems has a broadband dimension as part of its solution. Not going to be solved unless we really get hold of this technology, which is the most open and liberating and dynamic technology since the printing press, if not more so, to move this country ahead. So that's the first big thing I wanted to say, and the second thing is we are here to listen. I'm delighted to be here with my friend and colleague, Mignon Clyburn. Next to her is Blair Levin. He is the director of our executive director of our broadband task force. He has assembled, he and Chairman Janikowski, a really good team of experts to kind of chart us in the right direction. We have to present this broadband plan to Congress in 65 days. We still got a lot of work to do. Blair's got more to do maybe than anybody else to make this all come to happen. But we got a lot of good brain power and a lot of good help, but what we're here for is to hear from you folks and what your experience is and what you have and what you don't have and what you think you should have that you don't have. So we're really here to inform, and as Chairman Janikowski said, what you say here tonight will be part of the record, will be part of our consideration as we go forward. So I'm delighted to be here. I thank you for listening to me, and I'm honored to be back in Memphis. Thank you.
At this time, before we start with our panel discussion, I would like Representative Joe Towns to come forward if he has something to say.
Representative.
Let me say good evening to everyone, and Commissioner Hooks, I can call you Commissioner Hooks because you were the first commissioner that I knew as a young man growing up. But to all the other commissioners that are here, and to the elected officials, citizens, and actually the general public that's in attendance, it's actually good to be here. Commissioner Clyburn, Representative Cornell and myself, we're a little late because we just left, actually literally left Nashville about three hours ago trying to get here for this because we had a caucus meeting there, so we did the speed limit.
I don't believe you. Thank you for coming.
But we made it. We did. Because this is so important, Commissioners, I do have prepared remarks that we will make sure that you all receive so you can take it back with you. Let me say good evening to everyone, and I would like to start by thanking Commissioner Kopp, Commissioner Clyburn, who's a good friend of mine, for facilitating this hearing on digital inclusion in Memphis, Tennessee. I'm honored that the Federal Communications Commission has come here today to listen to our community and incorporate our feedback into the national broadband discussion. I hope everyone here has had or will have the opportunity to walk through the application room to see demonstrations of how broadband can be used to improve the quality of our lives and our communities. It is impossible to understate the importance of broadband. As job applications, as you just momentarily discussed, government services, health services, educational and economic development opportunities make the transition online. It's imperative that every American has the ability to connect to the affordable broadband service and the digital tools they need to take advantage of the opportunities broadband provides. We're living in a monumental time, and in these days of shifting national demographics and the everlasting and ever-increasing globalization of our society, we cannot afford to bear the cost of digital exclusion. Our ability to maintain our stead as a global leader depends on our ability to create more prosperous and productive society, one that fully incorporates broadband opportunity and digital equality into the fabric of our lives. Those who do not understand the power of broadband or how to use the technology will be relegated to the drag of society, and even one American loss to the digital revolution is too many. Therefore, those of us who understand broadband's tremendous power and potential as a life-changing medium have an obligation to ensure awareness and the adoption by America's underserved population. State legislators understand our duty to provide our constituents with the tools they need to be competitive and successful in their personal and or professional lives. Broadband is the new social currency for our day. We must ensure that our communities have full access to and beneficial use of this new digital currency. When we think about this plan and what it should achieve, we must reflect on the need to create universal broadband access and adoption opportunities for all Americans, especially for people in low-income, rural, and underserved communities. It is fitting that we discuss this topic of digital inclusion here today, because this place, the National Civil Rights Museum, here in Memphis, Tennessee, is symbolic of struggle for civic, social, political, and economic inclusion that we have pursued. Thank you. That we have pursued tirelessly in this country for decades. While interests and ideologies may vary, our goal going forward must be to impart full digital citizenship to all who inhabit this land. Digital inclusion requires that we inspire opportunities for broadband adoption among the millions of Americans with access to broadband who have yet to take advantage of the extraordinary services offered by this critical communication infrastructure. Although broadband is available to more than 90% of the country, only 65% of Americans adopt it nationwide. Compound that with the fact that only 46% of African Americans, I should say, subscribe to broadband at home, as do 46% of rural Americans and 35% of Americans with an income under $20,000. We face a broadband adoption barrier that threatens the very ability of our communities to thrive. Our underserved populations are most often in need of the social and economic benefit that can be had through the use of broadband technology. New distance learning opportunities, high quality, low cost healthcare services, easy to use entrepreneurial solutions. Therefore, we have to find ways to close the adoption gap. How many of y'all have ever seen surgery done via the internet? Surgery from one country to another one. I've actually seen that being done in this country and another country with the use of that technology. Very, very critical. We need to be more proactive in changing the value proposition of broadband for the people we serve. People use what they value. If they value broadband, then they will reap the benefits. If we educate them about the power of this innovative medium, demonstrate the life-altering consequences of its application, and teach them how to use it, we could dramatically increase our national rates of digital inclusion. State legislators can play a pivotal role in assuring that our constituents understand the true value of broadband and the technologies and application it enables. We can be the eyes and ears of the federal government when it is trying to discern who has access to broadband and who does not. We work with the local governments to better comprehend the needs of specific communities within our districts, and we can be agents of proactive coordination within state and federal agencies to ensure the universal broadband access and adoption is achieved. Constituents with the goals of President Barack Obama, consistent with the goals of President Barack Obama, Congress, and the federal communication. One example of the power of state legislators to achieve universal broadband adoption can be found right here in Tennessee. Actually, it's right up the road there. In Stanton, Tennessee, Representative Johnny Shaw, who happens to be a pastor as well, approached Connect Tennessee because he wanted to bring computers there for kids program to his congregation at St. John's Missionary Baptist Church. Computers for Kids is a computer distribution program targeting low-income kids and community anchor institutions serving at-risk populations. The program is funded via state funds as well as private donations. Working with Representative Shaw, Connect Tennessee donated computers to the church, which has now become a vibrant community computing institution, providing the only broadband service in that area. The Computer Center now offers online education programs to children and elders in the community. As yet another example of our commitment to progress, my colleagues from the National Black Caucus of State Legislators, the National Hispanic Caucus of State Legislators, the National Caucus of Native American State Legislators, and the National Asian-Pacific American Caucus of State Legislators recently joined in a joint policy statement setting forth imperatives for achieving 100% broadband. This just happened a couple of weeks ago at our national meeting. All those organizations have come together stating the very same thing. In addition to identifying the need to close the digital divide among minorities, rural, tribal, and low-income communities, this statement promotes ubiquitous broadband connectivity and adoption and discourages the creation of any policy that might hamper the goals of achieving 100% broadband adoption by all Americans. It challenges us to work together to achieve adoption as our top priority. This statement towards access, adoption, and inclusion. A call for digital equality and broadband opportunities can be instructive to the FCC as it develops its national broadband plan. As I would like and ask the Commission to consider this statement as a guide, particularly when the national broadband plan speaks to increasing adoption for underserved communities, those in the greatest need of the digital inclusion. My colleagues and I are in a unique position to be able to facilitate the implementation of the National Broadband Plan because we have the clear sense of what the American people want and need. We are also in a position to craft legislation to further the implementation of the National Broadband Plan in a manner that could help expedite 100% broadband deployment, adoption, and use. I look forward to working with the FCC and will offer my assistance as needed to help them design a broadband plan that best serves all Americans. I look forward to the day when we can survey the American landscape and proclaim that we have afforded all Americans the opportunity to reap the benefit of full digital inclusion. Thank you as well.
Thank you, Representative, for affirming that it's going to take all of us at all levels of government, at all levels of everything to make this happen. I want to also recognize the presence of my friend from Marks, Mississippi, State Representative Robert Jackson on the second row. Thanks for traveling and reminding me that I didn't return your phone call. I appreciate that. I want to recognize and affirm that responsible for all of this is a person sitting on my left. Our executive director of the National Broadband Task Force, who is here to let us know exactly where the FCC is and to affirm our ultimate goal of making sure that broadband is accessible, affordable, and that people must understand the incredible opportunity it affords. Blair.
Well, thank you very much. I just want to say very quickly on behalf of the several hundred people, the staff at the FCC that have been working night and day for the last couple hundred days, we have about 65 days left to go, but nothing is more important than these kind of hearings and this kind of input, and so I'm here really to listen. I'm happy to answer any questions people have, but I'm really here representing all of the folks who I know are still back at the office working and will be working late at the night and back early in the office early tomorrow morning. But I'm really here to listen. So thank you all very much for coming and look forward to your comments.
Thank you. And Blair has a long history with the FCC. I think he was everything. I think so. And there's an incredible resource sitting to my left. And when it comes time in a few minutes for question and answers, direct most of them to him. I want to introduce now our panelists who will help stimulate discussion, because this is we're at home. This is an open town hall meeting where you will have an opportunity to listen and learn and participate. This is like church, a very participatory process. Can I hear an amen? Thank you. I know I'm at home. I knew I would get that from you. I would like to introduce, in the order in which they will appear, and maybe the order in which they're seated, Tim Marama. Okay. Hello, Tim. He's the Vice President for the Center of Rural Strategies, for Rural Strategies, and Ms. Diane Polly, who's the Vice President of Compliance and Community Relations for the Metropolitan Interfaith Association. Sitting next to her, I believe, is Michael Remage. See? Okay. I'm from South Carolina, so I try to either put accent there or accent here. So Michael, I can say that, is the executive director of Connected Tennessee. Most of you may be familiar with him also. And my link sister, Miss Madeline C. Taylor, program director for the NAACP in Memphis.
Hey, Ms. Taylor, give her a
And maybe not making a formal presentation today, but thank you for joining us, is Mr. Wink Dowman. Oh, I got that one right. Shelby County, from the Shelby County Sheriff's Office. He's the CIO, to affirm that all of these entities, public safety is definitely an essential part of the equation. So I can say Tim. So Tim, if you would kick us off for this evening.
Thank you so much. It's wonderful to be here, and thank you for this opportunity, and thank you for including rural perspectives in this hearing about digital inclusion. I'm going to speak mostly about rural America, but you'll find that it has a lot of things in common with other constituents who are going to want to share their concerns this evening. Rural America represents about 20% of the population. It's about 80% of our land area. And as we look toward feeding and powering our nation sustainably, rural residents need to be at the table and on the job. Rural America is diverse economically and socially. About a quarter of all rural Americans live in counties where people of color represent the majority population. In about 3 more decades, half of all rural Americans will live in counties where people of color are the majority population. Regrettably, the gap between rural and metro America is widening. Rural people as a group have higher poverty rates, higher rates of chronic illness, drug abuse, premature death. You'll probably hear something about 2 Americas this evening, one with broadband and one without. The one I'm talking about starts at the county line, and it has much in common with other distressed parts of the United States. Broadband access is key to bringing rural people and resources into the American picture of prosperity, and we all know why. Broadband shrinks distances, transcends geography, creates opportunity. There are examples of success. Some are pretty simple. I found in California an ex-Forest Service geologist who sells rocks online around the world. In Lakewood, Minnesota, a medical clinic monitors patients remotely via broadband, lowering healthcare costs and providing better service to patients. 100 miles to the west in Minnesota, Dale's Auto Body Shop processes their claims online, is able to email those photos to the claims adjusters just like the guys in the metropolitan shops. But unfortunately, I found far more instances of people who were distressed about their lack of access, and it's a widening gap. In central Appalachia, in southwest Virginia and eastern Kentucky, mountain terrain makes travel difficult. It's the perfect kind of place for broadband to be applied. But in part of Harlan County, Kentucky, residents there are stuck with dial-up, and that won't work for students attending the local community college. They can't get access by dial-up to the school's Blackboard system. They can't submit their assignments online, and they can't even submit their exams. And I'm not talking about distance learning. I'm talking about traditional classrooms. One instructor spent 14 hours entering grades via a dial-up connection when it would have taken her about a half hour to do it on broadband. In California, there's a volunteer fire department that had only a dial-up connection. They made application to the state for a fire suppression assistance grant. They had to do it online. The dial-up connection kept kicking them off the government server. Log on, kick off, log on, kick off. They missed the deadline by 2 minutes. The thing to understand with broadband is that it has moved into the mainstream of economic and civic life. This is basic stuff now that we can take for granted if we have a high-speed connection. And as broadband moves ahead, which is great, those of us who are left behind are going to pay a higher and higher price for our exclusion. So what are the answers? I don't think there's a single solution to the rural broadband gap, but there are some principles that we think would be helpful, especially for rural folks. First, available is not synonymous with affordable. We've got to get online costs to an affordable rate. And a great lesson in history that we've printed in our online publication, The Daily Yonder, is about rural electrification. and how a hallmark of that program was not just accessibility to electricity, but subsidizing and loaning in ways that got the cost down so that people could actually afford it and get it installed in their homes and use it. We need innovation. Rural America is diverse, and our technological responses need to be diverse. One thing that has great promise for rural areas is unlicensed high-power use of VHF spectrum. I think this is key. And if there's one thing we've got in rural America, it's open spectrum, and we ought to be able to use it for our public good. Creating opportunities for local ownership is one way to ensure that broadband systems are affordable and responsive to local needs. We need to reform the Universal Service Fund to include support for broadband, but we need to do it in a way that ensures that it truly meets the needs of people who are overlooked by the logic of the marketplace. And finally, net neutrality is important for rural America. Rural people have less access to media in general, so the media that we do get must be unencumbered. It must be open and unfiltered access to information, because democracy and commercial innovation and our basic liberty demands no less. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Tim. You've outlined incredibly both the challenges and the opportunities before us. Ms. Diane.
I like that, Ms. Diane. I'm representing MIFA today, and there may be a few of you who don't know who MIFA is or what we do. We were founded in 1968 after the assassination of Martin Luther King as a result of people coming together to solve common problems. We're currently serving more than 60,000 people a year. Our mission as a social service agency is to change our community by helping change lives through our programs, which will sustain the independence of seniors, stabilize and transform families in crisis, and equip our urban teens for success. We unite all faiths, ages, and cultures to meet human needs and develop lasting solutions to help our neighbors with hope, independence, and dignity. But my focus tonight is going to be on seniors. So the downside of my talk today is that we're seeing requests for basic needs such as food, medicine, utility assistance, housing, emergency assistance due to the loss of jobs and other devastating economic conditions in our community. Our population that we serve, annual income for our seniors is less than $12,000 a year. And because of this, we're not seeing the huge outcry for broadband. In fact, many of our recipients are still trying to get their converter boxes to be installed to be able to view regular TV. They're asking for Lifeline and things like that. But in light of our business, the provision of basic services and needs, it is hard for us to get really enthusiastic right now about broadband, but we also would like to think we're looking for, toward the future, and we can see real advantages of how we could deliver our social services better. For example, people could go directly online to see if they're eligible for our services. They could see all of our services and make the decision rather than coming down and using public transportation to be told they don't qualify. And third, they could make a lot of direct inquiries to our various programs. I say that, and then the flip side is there are pockets of seniors in other parts of our community though, that are very computer savvy and demanding more access. A colleague of mine teaches computer and technology skills for seniors at one of our community centers here in town. The average age of her students is 65, and she's had success with both the retired professionals as well as many lower income people that had had no prior computer exposure. And a common phrase that she hears is, "I feel left behind, and I guess I'd better learn this thing because everybody's using it." And additionally, with the anticipated increase of baby boomers, there's probably obviously going to be increase in demand. We certainly support all efforts to make affordable, emphasis on affordable, broadband available to all of our participants. And our most recent stats in the Mid-South, seniors living alone is 101,170 people. And they didn't have we don't know how many of those people have broadband, but we don't think the number is that high. So again, it's very important to have high-speed internet access at community centers, senior centers, libraries, etc., and other public locations, at least as a first step. Thank you.
Thank you. Michael?
Thank you for allowing me this opportunity tonight to talk a little bit about the work of Connected Tennessee. Connected Tennessee started about 2.5 years ago as a result of recommendations from the Tennessee Broadband Task Force and by the Governor, Phil Bredesen. Our mission is simple: to map where broadband is available, to help to expand the availability of broadband, and to encourage its adoption. In Tennessee, we're in a similar position to many states. We have urban areas that are very urban, and we have rural areas that are very rural. As a result, we have broadband availability to over 90% of our households in the state. Now, when you look in the rural areas, that number is much lower. But even though we have 90% of broadband availability in the state, we only have about 55% adopting. And when you break that down and look at different low-income factors, that number is even lower. That number varies across the urban and the rural areas, but what holds true is that we have a large number of Tennesseans that are not adopting broadband at home. And I think that is the question that we're here to discuss today, is why. When we break it down further, we find that affordability and the perceived need of broadband are the two biggest factors. When we look at affordability even more, we see a barrier in the affordability of broadband, but we see even a larger barrier in the affordability of the computer itself. That leads us to the second barrier. Part of the affordability piece is the perceived need, that they don't see the value. And we have talked already tonight on how important it is. And I think that in part that is due to the cost. To address the specific issue of computer ownership, Connected Tennessee, as Representative Towns mentioned, started the Computers for Kids program. The goal of the program is to get computers into the hands of kids that would not have access to a computer otherwise. One aspect of the program is to give computers to children that are in the foster care system across the state that meet certain grades and discipline criteria. Another aspect is getting computers to centers like the one mentioned in Stanton across the state that work with kids on a daily basis. There are a number of examples right here in Memphis where that has happened, and one is the Boys and Girls Club. And I know that they will be set up in the other room when we finish. The Boys and Girls Club, we were able to give computers so that they could filter those throughout their centers to work with kids on a daily basis as they do every day, and to help them with the technology that they need so badly. Recently, we were at an event distributing the computers, and I asked the kids, do you use Facebook? Do you use MySpace? Do you use Twitter? And most of the kids' hands went up every question. And then I asked, do you have a computer at home? And many of the hands didn't go up. And I think that's the challenge that we're trying to overcome. Over the past 2 years, we've given out over 2,000 computers. And though I know that those computers made a difference in the lives of the kids that they touched, that's only a drop in the bucket. In Tennessee, 34% of those families making less than $25,000 a year say computers are too expensive as their barrier to adoption. 34%, compared to 5% of those making over $50,000 a year. So the affordability is so very important. That number is even a little bit higher when you look at low-income families with kids that just say that it's too expensive to use. Our parent organization, Connected Nation, has started an initiative called Every Citizen Online. Every Citizen Online has a goal of helping unconnected consumers purchase a brand new broadband-enabled computer using an instant rebate. Bundled with a year of discounted broadband service, the program will target 150,000 computers to low-income households across 20 states initially. The challenge that we have is how to address the affordability piece and touch as many children as possible, many families as possible. And I look forward to the discussion and be happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. Thank you, Michael. Ms. Madeline?
Thank you for this opportunity to represent the African American citizens in Memphis, North Mississippi, Eastern Arkansas, and the Boot Heel of Missouri. In the discussion of broadband access, the African American Hispanic community, and low-income citizens are the most underserved community. Fewer homes have computer access, and even less have dial-up or even broadband access. The primary reason being cost. Although mobile access is proliferating in this community, landlines are being disconnected, and therefore access to dial-up computer communication. As I considered the opportunities available with broadband access in Memphis, which is over 60% black and substantially economically deprived, I thought of these considerations. Number one, education. An affordable broadband service can extend educational resources to homebound students, to students with limited access to public libraries, and a college education for working students. Students who must use public transportation from school to home can now extend their library access time with broadband service at home. 2, healthcare. Affordable broadband service can bring healthcare workers right into the homes of the disabled, the remote, and those with limited access to transportation for remote diagnosis, treatment, and counseling. 3, e-commerce. Affordable broadband service opens up the world markets to the home shopper, who may be disabled, have transportation issues, or be concerned about security in congested shopping areas. Government. Affordable broadband service can certainly improve access to government services such as food stamps, Social Security, and the jails, and facilitate communication with the incarcerated, provide access to local political forums in every home with a computer. Employment. Most every company in this city now requires job applications online. Therefore, job seekers must get to the library or some access point to begin the job search. More affordable access points are needed. The Memphis branch NAACP recognizes the need for all of Memphis to have affordable access to computers and broadband service as the nature of communication changes in the 21st century. We appreciate the commitment of the Tennessee Black Caucus when they installed 5 computers in our office and in the offices of other nonprofits to make it accessible to this community. And of course, our office is just a couple of blocks away from here. And we have people that come into our office, and they do not interfere with our normal business operation, because this is a separate area in our conference room where they can come in and access the internet, learn how to use the internet. And this was provided by our state legislators, and we appreciate that. We have a generation of seniors who are now retiring from a workforce where high-speed computer access was the norm. However, fixed and limited incomes will not permit them to continue unless they have affordable access to the internet for the conduct of their daily lives. The national NAACP has incorporated many applications for the use of network services. Our website, naacp.org, includes a host of services, including a job finder, webcasts, a police misconduct reporting tool, and most recently, a blog from the Copenhagen Climate Conference. Affordable broadband access is critical to civic engagement, education, telemedicine, entertainment, e-commerce, e-government, and public safety. Universal, affordable broadband access is necessary. Thank you for allowing us to speak for those who may be unable to speak for themselves. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I know, did you have anything to add this evening? Or?
Absolutely.
Okay.
If I may be allowed to. First of all, I want to thank the FCC for giving me this opportunity to come and address the public and the fellow elected officials about some concerns we have in public safety, and I'm talking law enforcement, firefighters, emergency management. Currently, I don't know if you're aware of it or not, our biggest concern is the wireless broadband. And currently, we all pay a public vendor like Sprint, Verizon, AT&T for that service.
Currently, the sheriff's office, we have a little over 300 data users on wireless, and we're paying about $150,000 a year of your taxpayer dollars just to get there and to provide that. When I come on the police department back in 1974, a computer was unheard of, and as you all know, a computer in homes didn't start till the mid-'80s, so we're just literally over 20 years in the computer technology. And the first computers we had in the squad car, they were only a 19.2 kilobyte connection, which is not even equal to dial-up these days. So, but we've come so far, it's just unreal. And now you can ask Major Jim Harvey's in the back room representing the Memphis Police Department. You can ask him. Our guys cannot work without this technology. So it's very important that we pay for this technology, even though we have to get it through a public carrier right now. So, and we do have gap coverage. That's an issue. The city is not as bad as the county is. We have rural areas in the county. Right now, we have no wireless coverage at all. As a matter of fact, most people in some of those rural areas in Shelby County, Tipton County, in the tri-state area, the only way they can get to the internet is through satellite, because it's simply there's no wired connection out there. There's no wireless towers available for them to hit. So that's certainly a concern. The Memphis Police Department is applying for a BTOP grant. That stands for Broadband Technologies Opportunity Program. There's a little less than $5 million available nationwide for that grant, and what they decided to do, and we partner with them along with Memphis Light, Gas and Water, along with the city schools, along with the public library system, is to put in wide hotspot areas where, like in the inner city, where people who can't afford internet or anything, if they do have a computer and they have a wireless connection, they can actually get on the internet for free. So we've applied for that. Like I said, we're working with the Memphis Light, Gas and Water, the schools, and the other areas to get that. And FCC, I hope you're listening. So we'll make sure of that. So the other thing is, and also I'm sure there's not many of you are familiar with the 700 megahertz. That area was designed to be just for data for public safety and some for, I think, for public use. But we're interested in getting that moving forward also, so we can reduce our cost. And last, just to wrap it up, just to give you an idea of what we can do just in a patrol car. Right now, the different applications that we use, we have access to NCIC, that's the National Crime Information Center, which is just a wealth of history. We can do warrant checks, driver's license checks, we can do criminal history checks. We do our daily activity logs. Back in the old days, you had to fill out the time you got the call, the time you got on the scene, what the call was, where it was, what the disposition was. We do that on computer now. We have access to inmate photos online. We do our crime scene, our crime reports wirelessly in the field. We're also starting now to move to the area where we're doing our crash or accident reports without that. The officers in my department are able to see the computer-aided dispatch, so they know when they get a call. They don't have to write it down. They can just look at the screen and see the call that they're getting. We also are deploying some new technology. It's called mobile AFIS. That mobile AFIS stands for Automatic Fingerprint Identification System, where if there's any question about your identity and you've been arrested before, you put your finger on a thumb scan, and we can tell right away within a couple of seconds, are you who you say you are? So that avoids a lot of different things. We have in-car video now. We also have crime mapping. And then the latest technology the Memphis Police Department's already deployed, and we're fixing to start deploying with sheriff's offices as well, is the automatic license plate reader. Just from that, and I'm sure you've seen it, look like just a regular closed-circuit TV on top of a blue light on a squad car, MPD. That's an automatic license plate reader. It tells them a bunch of things in real time. It tells them, is the car properly registered? Is the driver now got a proper, or the registered owner have a suspended, revoked, or current driver's license? It'll tell us if the car is stolen. It'll tell us if the tags don't belong on the car. I mean, it'll tell us if there's a wanted party at the address the car is registered to. So just be aware of that when you're out there. And the last thing, the reason why this broadband is so important is not just the cost. We need the cost lowered for public safety because it's your taxpayer dollars, but it's the critical infrastructure monitoring with cameras. Right now, the Real-Time Crime Center at the Memphis Police Department monitors over 100 cameras and on critical infrastructure like the bridge, the federal building, state building, DuPont, some of the other hazardous chemical areas. They got over 100 cameras out there right now. They monitor them. Most of them are fed through an internet connection. Some of them are wireless, but I mean, it's a very expensive annual cost that we have to deal with. So we're looking forward to seeing if we can find some cheaper broadband opportunities to get that in. And with that, I'm done.
Thank you. I'm not going to tell Wink why. I might be kind of familiar with some of the things he's just said, but and you've got these technologies in your car. Did you monitor Representative Towns and those when they were coming in? You didn't catch that? Okay, there's some faults and there's some I guess you do need some more money, right? Okay. Thank you. At this point, we're going to open everything up for questions. There are mics on my far left, and there will be on my far right. And the first question appropriately goes to Dr. Hooks.
I'm not quite sure this is a question, but I've had a difficult time sitting here trying to get it together because I've got all kinds of equipment in my house, and I can't work any of it. Amen. And I feel ashamed of that. I really do, but I can't. I have a church full of members, many of whom have no more idea how to operate this broadband than they would to fly a spaceship. Many, many years ago, when I was at the Federal Communications Commission, we had two bands. One was called Very High Frequency, VHF, 1 through 13. We had Ultra High Frequency, which went to 100. Nobody knows what the history of this world would have been had we decided as a nation to go with ultra high first. It would have eliminated, frankly, the need for many of the cable stations, which are charged, and the other, because you'd had 87 additional channels. But the strange thing was they made televisions that had ultra-high frequency capacity, but you couldn't get it unless you knew how to work a certain button. So there were hundreds of people sitting at home looking 1 through 13. They had no more idea how to get another channel, as I said in the flash. So somehow, and I don't think this is a Federal Communication financial responsibility, I really don't, but I think it's the Federal Communication responsibility to encourage people like the NAACP. I've had this at my church. I had a senior citizens house, and we had all kinds of instruments. So I'm simply saying it and I have enjoyed this discussion as I lead. Somehow, no matter how simple it may seem, we've got to teach people how to use what they will get, because there's no need of having it if you can't use it. If you were to run a store at the airport selling goods from $1 to $22, you will discover if your little computer stops working, close that store, because the average operator out there cannot subtract 22 from it. Save their lives. If that machine stops working, close it up. You'll be bankrupt in the morning. And they'll argue with you that you're wrong if you try to help them. So it is not only technology, it is learning how to use it. In a nation where all this economic problem, people without jobs, you're doing down at the NAACP, we've scrounged up some money here and there. I'm simply making a plea. The other is not on the program, and I'm doing this publicly, so I hope I won't get caught in any ethical problem, but it is an absolute doggone dadgum out of the world shame that I get 10 or 12 solicitation calls every day and can't stop them. 7 o'clock in the morning. This is Joe. And I'm with the Joe Company. And the Joe Company got something free for you. I say, what does it cost? Wait a minute, I'll tell you about it. Hit 1, then hit 2. Well, I want to go to sleep so badly, and ain't nobody else calling me. So I hope, and this is a real earnest plea, people have called me from all over the nation thinking I can still do something. Let's work on these. Let's fix it so if we don't want calls, we don't have to get them. And they're preying on old people. They make you sign something or say something that you don't mean, and you look up and you got a box in your bed the next day. Here comes the box from some company. You got to pay for it. Then the collection agency starts. God knows it may not be your primary responsibility, but somehow This great big owl wave cannot be used to mutilate and tear people up. Somehow, I beg of you, if I have to try to start a public hearing, write me a letter. I can read that. Thank you, and God bless you.
Thank you, Doctor. I appreciate that. Again, would you join me in once again thanking Dr. Hooks, an icon. Thank you. He really knows how to begin and segue appropriately a program. So again, at this time, if you want to add to the conversation, or as Dr. Hooks just did, present another challenge to us, again, let me say just two simple rules. If we could, yes, sir?
If anybody has a question to me, would you give them a chance so I can leave?
Okay.
It's not breaking into your routine, too.
Well, you're allowed to break into my routine. Thank you, sir. And any questions in particular before he leaves for Dr. Hooks? They'll ask you later. They know where to find you, I think. Okay. Thank you. Okay. Again, if we could limit our comments and/or questions to broadband, and if Roger, who is in charge of keeping time, if we could also, as much as possible, make our comments or questions as succinct as possible, and if you could not follow Roger's lead by turning off your cell phones or pagers or putting them on mute. Roger, please. Yeah, right. It was yours before. My ears are pretty good. I know that first phone that was ringing was an FCC employee's phone. So anyway, but if you have any questions and or comments, our mics are on either side. And yes, sir, if you would, if either would approach to the left or to the right, if you would. Thank you. Okay.
Yes, good afternoon.
Well,
good evening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, do you mind if the lady goes first? Are you okay? Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Hooks has already left, but I wanted to say that he is certainly a mentor and a role model for all of us that know that we have a whole lot to do and want to keep on doing it.
Would you identify yourself?
My name is Minnie Bomer, and I was going to say to Commissioner Cops and to Miss Clyburn, my name is Minnie Bomer, and I'm from rural West Tennessee, Covington. I came up primarily because I wanted to say to you that we have some concerns, but we feel that those concerns can be addressed. I heard from your panel tonight that you were speaking about rural people. I heard that. And I heard someone talked about the population of African Americans in this area, and also about older people, and I'm all three. So I think I have a little bit of knowledge as to what needs to happen. But I came here tonight to say that we have organized in rural West Tennessee. Rural West Tennessee is organized and ready to do some things. I came to represent Mississippi Delta Grassroots Caucus. We are part of a 9-state coalition, and Tennessee has actually organized our area, and we're ready to put broadband in our area. We're ready to work with whatever group that's doing that. Also for Bowman and Associates, who can help to provide connections to blacks, professional blacks, that people say that they can't read, can't find, to help work on certain problems. The Bowman and Associates can connect any blacks that need to be connected to get the education and information out. And the last organization that we are also representing tonight is the Support Center for Disparities Elimination. It's a statewide 501c3 organization that was organized primarily to eliminate disparities in rural areas, especially in Tennessee, where there is a large population of blacks, but also all over Tennessee. We can operate all over Tennessee. We're a 501c3 that's been organized now for 2 years. And I wanted this commission to know that when you get ready to do something in the rural areas, look for these groups. Because there are times when people will say, well, we couldn't find anybody or we couldn't get anybody organized. We can. We have and I wanted it to go on record here tonight to say that there are 3 areas that you can go to. For professional people, you go to Bowman Association. For the whole wide non-state area, you can go to Memphis Delta Grassroots Organization, or you can go to the Support Center for Disparities Elimination, and we are ready to work with the group and make sure that we get broadband where it needs to go.
Thank you very much for letting us know that. Okay. I'll do it in order. Take the first 4 gentlemen on my left. Yes.
My name is Melvin Massey. I am the general manager of the WUMR radio station at the University of Memphis.
Welcome.
And thank you. We are, of course, involved with this as far as we're trying to work with our duality of our signal and some other things. But I would like to ask about this broadband plan that the government is starting now. Is this something like the insurance plan with the health care debate that's going on? Is this going to be a separate entity in competition with AT&T, Sprint, and those guys? Or is this to tie in with those commercial ventures?
Okay. Asking about the National Broadband Plan. Blair?
Blair. Yeah. It's a good question. Most of the broadband networks in this country have been built by private entities like AT&T and Verizon or the cable companies. The plan that we're doing is really trying to figure out a couple of very specific questions that Congress asked us to solve, such as how do we get broadband to places where it isn't currently, where those companies haven't built out? How do we make it more affordable, something that was mentioned by a number of different folks? How do we ensure that people know how to use it? Something else was mentioned by a lot of folks. And also, how do we use broadband to solve certain national problems such as healthcare, education, job training, energy savings? It is not it's not part of the plan to create a new entity that will be in competition with the private entities. Indeed, we fully anticipate that most of the investment going to broadband will continue to be private entities, but there are certain assets that are key to broadband deployment that are in fact controlled by the government. Let me just mention 2. One is spectrum, and the other is universal service funds. About $7 billion a year goes to support telephone service in high-cost areas or telephone service for low-income individuals. And one of the most important questions we're addressing is how do we make sure both the spectrum and the Universal Service Fund is used effectively to help drive better broadband in this country. But thank you.
Thank you for that.
Can I add just a thought to that? You know, if this gets into a either or us or them kind of thing, we're never going to get broadband built in this country. If you look at the history of infrastructure, how we got rural electricity out, how we got plain old telephone service out, how we built railroads, how we built roads and bridges and canals, we always found a way for the public sector and the private sector to work together. Now, for the last 8 or so years in this country, when it came to broadband, we got away from that. And there was the assumption, the private sector can do it all. Well, we know there's no business plans for the private sector to go into some of these areas. So what we got to do is we got to leverage off one another. There's a lot of stuff that the government can't do that the private sector can. There's some things that government can do that private sector cannot. And somebody got to lead this and have that incentive to build a real public-private partnership. That's how we build the country. That's how we can get broadband out, I think, too.
Thank you, Commissioner. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm a registered voter and taxpayer, and my name is Roby Williams. I serve in the capacity of president of the Black Business Association of Memphis. And our business people let me know that broadband is important. In fact, I agree with Commissioner Copps. Today, broadband is as fundamental and foundational to our progress and prosperity as access to public libraries were in the 1950s and 1960s. We have to have universal broadband access at low cost, or if you want to call it low-cost broadband ubiquity. My question is this. What 2 or 3 things can we do as citizens to facilitate the rushing in of this where you can shrink the time frame to universal access? What can we do to help you do that?
Okay. Panelists, do you have anyone here? 1 or 2 things. Commissioner Copps?
Well, first of all, there's a lot of members and a lot of folks in this audience who are associated with organizations civil rights groups or others. Make sure those organizations are online and the young people looking for information from your organizations know that that's where they go to get it. Make sure you're distributing valuable things, the things that kids and others really need. The other thing I think is really to support media literacy programs. You're never going to get this adoption problem solved. It's a long-term thing. We can start now, but you're going to have in this country before this is all over with some kind of media literacy program that goes from K through the 12th grade, I think. And that doesn't mean you got to have a full year course every year, but there's something at every age level to teach these kids how to use the technology and to teach these kids how the technology can use or misuse them. Because as you all know, a lot of the stuff out there on the internet is far from an unmixed blessing, and a lot of it is stuff we don't want our kids to see. So I think just, organizing, literacy, and make sure that your public servants, your elected officials, know how important this is to you. When the FCC comes with a plan, we're probably going to have some recommendations for Congress or for the administration of things that need to be done to get this stuff deployed. It's going to be expensive. Maybe it's going to have to be tax incentives, maybe other incentives. I want to ask a question later about this whole idea of affordable computers. What's the role of getting equipment out? Nothing gets done in politics, you folks know a lot better than me, unless there's grassroots pressure behind it and building behind it. So you got to be talking when they come home to town hall meetings and stuff like that, saying, hey, how are we really going to get this stuff out? We really need it, and our kids need it. We need it, too.
Thank you. Ms. Clyburn, I'm a big fan of your father's.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I'll let him know. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Yes. I'm Robert Gurley, president of the Westwood Neighborhood Association, and my primary concern is the senior citizens. A good way to get broadband out in the community would be having broadband computers at every community center. We have seniors at our community centers. They are eager to learn how to use a computer, how to use broadband. My primary concern is security and enforcement when you find people breaking the law. In the past, I've noticed on the air crimes. I'm talking about VHF, UHF. When you have someone breaking the law on the air, the FCC didn't have the resources to track these people down and do what was right. Now, what will happen if we don't have this type of security and the resources to enforce the law, especially when it applies to senior citizens? Say, take for instance, if you've got a hacker or something, get into their accounts, say if they are banking online, and they don't understand everything that's going on, and they can clean their account out. Now, what will we have in place to make sure if it does happen, that the people will be prosecuted?
Thank you, sir. One more from this side, then you.
Thank you, ma'am.
One more from this side. Yes, sir. Thank you for your patience. I did kind of look to see how everybody got it. Thank you. Yes, sir. Thank you.
So there's not going to be answers to his question? You're going to say?
Well, if we could get critical mass, and then we'll, unless someone has something to address.
No, I totally agree. I think that was, when I talked to the seniors, they're very concerned about that, probably more so than the children, about their security. Very, very true.
And that's at the heart of what we.
Yeah, no, I'll just say, it's not something which is traditionally an FCC issue. There's the Justice Department, State Attorney Generals, but actually the Federal Trade Commission has been doing a lot of work on this and recently held some workshops on this. We're trying to coordinate a response. That is to say, as part of the plan, we will talk about this issue, but fundamentally this is a new kind of crime. And every time we figure out one solution, the criminals start to move ahead. So as Commissioner Copps just said, it is not an unmixed blessing, right? I mean, there are new dangers here, and we just need to make sure that law enforcement, because it's fundamentally a law enforcement issue, have the resources, have the technology. I think earlier the CIO of the police was talking about having that technology so that we can stay one step ahead. But you're very right to raise it, and we certainly hope to point in the right direction with it.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Okay. I'm not going to give my name because I'm one of those unique citizens who already feels a certain soft tyranny in their lives, and I'm a minority. It has nothing to do with my skin color. It has to do with my philosophical perspective. I'm a little disappointed that the panel doesn't represent divergent viewpoints. I thought this was a discussion that I would be going to. At this point, there's a time clock running for those who want to ask questions. The panel has taken an hour and 20 minutes or an hour and 10 minutes to basically promote a program, but there's been no information shared about the mechanics of it. We hear everything from education to broadband, as if broadband were not already available. We hear the word exclusion as if there is a covert action to prevent people from accessing this industry, and there is not. It's a simple matter of buying a commodity like shoes, food, an automobile. And I haven't heard anything about how this will be paid for. The Congress just passed a $1.1 trillion addition to our deficit, which is, I think, at about $12 trillion, maybe off a trillion here and there, but what's the difference? That's the denomination that we talk in these days. And I think that one of the worst things that could be done is for our government to continue to go before good people and say, what do you want? Let's give it to you. And not address the question of who's going to pay for it and who is ultimately going to suffer. Who is going to be enslaved to their government for the purposes of providing anything and everything that the public wants. I'm not interested in denying anybody any liberties. I'm simply trying to overlay what I think is a voice of reason here. Children need to earn and learn how to save and get the commodities that they value for their own betterment. That's what achievement's about. So thanks for hearing me.
Thank you for your viewpoint. Yes, sir.
One second, Commissioner Coleman. Can I just, for those of you who don't know, we have somebody taping this whole procedure, and we have a transcript, and it's going into the official record. So every comment becomes an official comment, and even if you don't hear an answer, it becomes a comment into the broadband plan. So you're being heard. Plus, one other thing, we are webcasting this to several thousand people and tweeting it to, Blair, how many?
I think 200,000.
200,000 people. Yeah. So anyway, go ahead, sir.
Well, how tweet it is. My name's Hal Rounds. I fit a couple of the demographic groups you've mentioned. I am rural, and I'm a geezer, senior citizen. Maybe not entirely typical. I programmed my first computer in Hollerith cards in 1963. And so I've seen the development of computer usage and communications for many decades. I also have another piece of background which incites me to perhaps agree with a person who just spoke. I have, as a student of history and as a participant in the development of Federal Express, I have seen what regulation does. Federal Express existed expressly because it found a hole in the regulatory structure that was keeping new enterprises from developing a new way of distributing packages. And as Mr. Copps pointed out, there has been a history of interface between railroads and private enterprise, but perhaps he's forgotten that in the late 1940s, right after World War II, the ICC prevented Atchison, Topeka, and Santa Fe Railway from becoming an air freight company because it said, we are your regulators and you are a railroad. So what you need, I think, to consider here is how can you prevent your regulatory power from suppressing ideas that you haven't had in making the broadband accessible to all the people of this country. Rural, like where I am. I Googled the map to find my way here tonight. And how are you going to keep that power that you have from suppressing and selecting the technology, selecting the technology you want and suppressing the technology that you do not want or that somebody else has thought of and just hasn't met the committee's approval? All right? So I would offer this. Perhaps the best way to expand nationwide access to broadband is treat it as property, not something that the government owns and leases out parts of the spectrum, that actually defines parts of the spectrum like the county register does pieces of property and allow people to own it and profit by inventing their own ways to expand the technology for both sending and receiving and the applications. This is where the opportunity, I think, lies. And central government control is more likely to be a suppressor to that than it is to be an inciter of improvement. Thank you.
Thank you.
Can I just say that nothing in the plan, one of the principles by which we're doing the design of the plan is not to choose technologies and to let the market move in a lot of ways. I think there are some complexities, such as the fact that with spectrum, basically the FCC went in a direction very similar to what you were suggesting, actually, when I was there the first time, and started to sell spectrum in auctions with very flexible use patterns. And there were a lot of different developments in it. But what we find is that spectrum is a very peculiar kind of asset, and trying to get and I think the people who run the mobile broadband companies would tell you this, you need certain configurations in terms of size of frequencies, you need certain configurations in terms of size of geographies, you need certain kind of frequencies in terms of global harmonization to ride the cost curves down for the consumer equipment that I'm sure you're familiar with. So even very free market oriented, the most free market oriented countries still have government playing a very large role in the allocation mechanisms for spectrum, which is a very key driver of this. Similarly, broadband is very affected by the way governments utilize certain rights of way in local governments and state governments, how people are allowed to attach to poles. So it's not simply, I think that we could have a very interesting discussion of history, and there are certainly points where government did some things that hurt. There are a couple things, by the way, that government did to help. The internet itself exists only by virtue of research and development funding that the government did many, many years ago. Finding that balance is difficult. And I would say in the same way that, and it's been mentioned a few places here, I think you would agree the government has an obligation to make sure that kids are digitally literate. And in the same way, the digital literacy is the new literacy. If you cannot figure out how to work a computer, it's going to be very difficult to have a job, to find a job that you can do in the decades ahead. So in developing this plan, I think we're sensitive to, there's nothing that we're going to propose that would try to stifle any kind of technology. Hopefully we'll get that balance right. If we don't, I'm sure you'll let us know, because we want innovation to thrive on that ecosystem. So thanks.
Thank you. Thank you, Blair. Yes, sir.
Thank you. You know, the last two speakers remind me of the health care debate. Sounds like we are moving back to the issues involved there. My name is Kazi Chombo. Chombo, C-H-O-M-B-O, means ship or boat in the Swahili language, and Kazi stands for service. Therefore, in English, my name is Stan Ship, S-H-I-P-P. This is basically a short page here of my one day's journey to the Super Information Highway. On November the 28th, 2009, 7 days ago, I had written this in anticipation that the hearing would have been December 5th. But 7 days ago, I left my senior citizens apartment and boarded the number 56 MATA bus. That's Memphis Area Transit Authority bus, transferred to the 31st 31 Crosstown bus, then transferred to the 50 Germantown bus. The bus was full of Saturday shoppers, all African Americans. Standing in front of me were several teenagers wearing baggy trousers, baseball caps, hooded jackets. When we reached the new Ben Hooks Public Library, I was delighted to see approximately a dozen teenagers getting off the bus with me. The library had changed since my last visit some 3 weeks ago. The security guards are practically all now white. The staff presence were all white except for one female, and for the first time, an African American male. The check line checkout line was unusually long today. 20 to 30 children, adults, parents with their children. I have come to the library today, one, to use the AutoZone company donated computer access, www.alldata.com, and to print out the location of a fuel pump on my van and how to remove it from the gas tank. Two, to print out a Microsoft PowerPoint invoice program for my business needs on this day. Three, to access my credit file and to learn why my attempt to purchase a computer and printer was declined. I arrived at the third floor business section. All staff and security are white. The city of Memphis is approximately 70% African Americans. The users of the Central Library are usually 99% African Americans of all ages. I learned that a new library computer access program had just been initiated. I learned that this was part of a new Pharaoh printer software. The new policy permits additional tracking of computer users. I'm a frequent user of this library since its grand opening. I am well known to the library staff. On this day, I had approximately 45 minutes to complete my mission this morning and return to MATA bus numbers 50, 31, and 30 and 56. The new computer access procedures now requires me to present a library card. I must now go back to the first floor, checkout line, 20 to 30 persons long.
Excuse me,
finally,
sir. Excuse me, sir.
Yes.
Could we have, in order to get everybody, could we, 30 more
Summary.
seconds? Thank you very much.
Yes,
Thank you very
I'd
much.
be happy to. After using the library computers and entering a command to print, the Pharaoh printer appears showing my private proprietary business information on the public screen, source, data, names, etc. I understand from the library staff that this system was installed on November 23rd, 2009, approximately 2 weeks ago. I understand that there might have been a terrorist threat. I believe that this new policy is one of a series of mission creep steps to prevent access to the super information highway by the 70% African American majority in the city. I believe that this new procedure implemented at this time has more to do with the competition between the political cultural groups than any alleged terrorist threat.
Sir.
We are relegated to taking the bus to participate, two lines, in the new electronic communication industry. A public access radio station allows a healthy, needed debate of the intercultural issues on a daily basis. All 6 lanes of the super information highway is owned and operated by the same cultural groups in this nation and in this city.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
And also, you allow me to affirm that there's a showcase out to my left. If you have some particular issues as it relates to Memphis Public Library, there's a very nice young lady out there who will be glad to engage
and I
you.
would like for the record to submit this to.
Absolutely. If you would, that young lady to your, who's a native daughter, we'll take that from you. Thank you.
Okay, I want to remind everybody, I'm going to be the real tough guy. We have a timer here, 2 minutes, and please limit the questions to the National Broadband Plan and suggestions and questions.
Right.
Sir? That means I don't get equal time?
Yeah.
Okay, 2 minutes is no problem. As I've listened to the panelists tonight, I think everything you've suggested we embrace. We would embrace that we want broadband to be available to everyone. We want people to be able to afford it. We want people to embrace it and take part in it. I would think there must be some other issues that perhaps you're waiting for us to raise, because I don't see why we would have to do a nationwide tour to agree with what you just said. So I would wonder if there's some other issues that ought to be raised. And I'll raise one. Net neutrality is something that I've read it about. I don't know that I understand it totally, but one of the aspects of that, one of the panelists talked about it, depending on how that's enforced or enacted, it could be a disincentive to additional investment by some of the big fellows that have already built this wonderful system we have, whether it's AT&T, Sprint, Verizon, whoever. But if this net neutrality is implemented in a way that they no longer have an incentive to invest more money, now that could really impact the black community because we are already behind this digital divide. Now, we should be giving them an incentive to invest more money to catch up a community as opposed to a disincentive of investment. So I'm wondering, as you see it going forward, will there continue to be an incentive for those who have built what we have today that we're impressed with to invest more to both catch up the black community and also take America further ahead?
You heard Blair mention that you're mentioning a docket, that a notice of proposed rulemaking that is still open. So you do have an opportunity to voice your opinion as it relates to that. But if you were to read some of the questions, because that's what it's a notice and it asks a whole series of questions, I think you will hear from the tenor that it is, again, not our desire or objective to stifle anything as it relates to these emerging technologies. Everything should be there should be no discrimination as it relates to these emerging technologies. So I'm hoping that you will go online and look at this notice for proposed rulemaking. If you have some issues or and opinions that you have most eloquently presented, to present them again to us. And so we can engage in the discussions that, of course, are still ongoing. I think Commissioner Cobbs has something to add.
You know, I think I agree if network neutrality was imposed the wrong way, it could be a disincentive. But, you know, there's a basic premise here, and the premise is this. The Internet is the most open and dynamic and probably liberating technology that we've ever had in this country. That was its genius. That's how it's gotten this far. What we have to be careful of going forward is that it stays open and free and dynamic and liberating and is not subject to gatekeeper control. We've got a telecommunications system in this country that's controlled by a few very, very large companies with a lot of power. And what we want to make sure, I think, is that when you want to go to that Internet and access certain content, nobody's going to tell you where to go, how you can get there, what you can do, as long as it's a lawful enterprise. That's the genius. It thrives on innovation. Obviously, we create a climate where there's incentive for innovation and research and development, because your country and mine right now is number 15 in the world in broadband penetration. Imagine that. 15. We invented the thing. The Internet was invented right here at home, thank you. And now 15 countries are ahead of us, so we got to fix that. But the network neutrality is the basic premise. Within that, you have to let companies have something called reasonable network management, so if it gets overloaded, they can deal with that, and they can do the technical things. But you don't want to just say, we're not going to be looking at this anymore, just go ahead and do what you want, because history tells you when a company has a technical capacity to interfere with something, and a financial incentive to do it, someone's going to try it. And it might not be every company, but we're not going after. We want to be able to have the FCC where it's in a place where it can go after the bad actors and keep that Internet open and free.
Thank you, sir.
Okay, we have a question from Twitter. Commissioner Cobbs, you call for media literacy. Good, but will you involve experts? I agree with the need for K-12 media literacy.
Sure, should be run by experts, should be designed by educators. Education, when you talk about media literacy, you get into a pretty difficult situation because you're not looking for a federal program because education is state and local. But that doesn't mean there's not things for the federal government to do, and this is just me kind of speaking off the top of my head here and propose this, but, you know, you could get experts together to design the kind of literacy program I was talking about before that would be appropriate at various grade levels, put it up on the internet, let the local school board decide if that's appropriate or not. If it is, use it. You save people a lot of money. Every district doesn't have to go out and reinvent from scratch. But if they want to do that or they want to do it differently, that's fine too. That's at least how I'd launch the thing. But absolutely, we want the best and the brightest of educators involved in this, and we don't want the FCC designing it.
We actually have one show we don't censor. Is the need for national broadband service indicative of a failed FCC policy in fostering ISP competition?
Sounds like Blair.
Blair.
No, actually. I think that, first of all, one of the things we did when we started was we started to look at what other countries had done, and there are over 20 countries that have done similar kinds of plans. Korea most notably started very early on, as soon as broadband caught on in the mid-90s. And that's a reason why, one of the reasons why Korea is leader both in terms of penetration as well in the speed of the networks that they have. There are certain elements to where you actually kind of need a plan. One could have an interesting argument about whether there was a failed policy. One can certainly have an interesting argument about history, but I'll spare you all both my own views on the history as well as the views of many others, but simply to say, even if we had done everything perfectly, and I speak as one who was chief of staff at the FCC during the Clinton years, and we did a lot of things I'm proud of, but we also made some mistakes. But the important thing is really to say, what do we need to do to move forward? So I think we need a plan anyway.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Jency, and that's JencyTN on Twitter, since we're talking about Twitter. But one thing that came to mind is the phrase, be careful what you ask for, because you just might get it. And I think an important component to this discussion of the education of the citizenry on the adoption of broadband access and social media in particular is the adoption rate of our public officials that we give the responsibility to govern and to make decisions and to hold accountable. And so I think that for me, a lot of the people that I interact with that are politicians online, some of them actually interact directly, and some of them you can tell it's their staff members. And I think from a citizen's perspective, if the federal government is going to be empowering through the use of our tax dollars this kind of technology, thereby these politicians making use of this technology, then I would like to see a similar education plan for those politicians to actually use the technology to directly engage with us and not just merely broadcast, what they had for lunch or, that sort of thing.
Can I just say real quickly, first of all, I think it's a really good point, but I think it really changes the paradigm. It really changes the way democracy can work. For example, someone who I had the great pleasure of working with during the presidential transition and who is now the country's chief information officer, Vivek Kundra, when he was the chief information officer of the District of Columbia, he decided to just throw a whole bunch of data from the District of Columbia up on the web and have people build applications. And suddenly people started building applications so that, like, if you were going to drive somewhere, you would know where all the city operations were going and what streets were being rebuilt so that you could avoid them. And you would know where kind of the dangerous crime areas were at certain points in time so you could avoid them. But it was really just there was no elected official involved. It was people taking the data that rightly was theirs. He did the same thing, by the way, now that he's doing the same job for the federal government, where he put a bunch of information about the federal government spends about $70 billion a year on information technology projects. And he put a bunch of information on there and just said, y'all figure out, are we doing this right? Are we buying the right things? And as a result of that, people started to analyze that information, and a number of programs were killed because they were actually very inefficient in terms of kind of how they were trying to use information technology. So I would say it's a tremendous opportunity that goes well beyond, yes, it does allow people to communicate more effectively with a member of Congress or with a member of the state legislature. But I think in terms of the way it engages all of us as kind of citizen participants, all of us know things. We actually have expertise in things. We have expertise about our communities. We have expertise about any number of different things that really allows kind of level of government allows a level of participation in changing the way we think about democracy, which I think is it's one of the things I hope we get out of this plan.
Thank you so much. Yes, sir.
Good evening. My name is Wayne Jones, and I'm from Holly Springs, Mississippi, and I am a fiber optics components and systems subject matter expert. My question tonight has to do with the FCC's. My question is, what does the FCC plan or how to support the fiber to the home industry? We talked about broadband and the thing, and it's not any good if people don't know how to use it. I mean, we all need the services, and the children need to know how to use it, and the senior citizens need to know how to use it, and we all do. All across the country, municipalities are taking the initiative themselves with the rights of way, from whether it be electricity, gas, water, whatever in their municipality, to try to come up with a way to bring broadband services to their community, the voice, data, and video. So I want to know, what is it that the FCC has planned to support the fiber to the home industry, local folks getting together to bring their services to their community, and in terms of regulation, or in terms of regulation, if there has to be regulation, in terms of the funding, because it's a Herculean task in terms of funding and understanding how to bring about fiber, to actually build a fiber to the home network, design it, and make it successful, in the educational process that has to come along with that for the entire community. So that's my question. Thank you very much.
Having met on several occasions with the Fiber to the Home Council and listened to some of their arguments, let me say one thing about them, and then I think you're also asking a question about municipalities and their role in this. I'll try to answer that as well. Very quickly, the fiber to the home community wants to kind of bring that next generation of super fast broadband, not just kind of the broadband that a lot of people have today. There are a variety of different proposals, some of which I don't think we're going to do. For example, some people would like the government to fund very, very high next generation networks, super high speed networks. I don't, my bosses at the commission are welcome to disagree with me, but for example, to bring fiber to every home in America would cost, I think, about $350 billion, and I don't think the federal government is going to finance that. But having said that, there are some other things that the fiber folks have suggested that I think are quite reasonable. For example, one thing that's interesting today, consumers actually cannot find out how fast their connections are. They're often sold connections at a certain speed, but the average speed they really get is much less. And one of the things that the fiber folks have said is, if you tell people, if you enable them to know what they're getting, and you also enable them to know what their neighbors, not their exact neighbors, but what other people are getting in the neighborhood, right? So you can see both that you're getting 8, but other people are getting 12 and paying less, that will cause the service providers to have to upgrade their networks, and that increases the use of such technologies as fiber. So we're certainly looking at how do we allow consumers to know more about both what they're getting and what other options are. As to the municipalities, it's a really interesting question. It's been debated in Congress and in the state legislatures. We've just been talking. We don't, I think what you're going to see over the next couple of months, we've had a very open process. Wednesday we're going to report to the commission on some of the policy issues. This is one. But the staff that I work with generally takes a view that we should be, that if a municipality feels they're not being served, if they don't have either any service or a level of service they're satisfied with, that they have to have some mechanism where they can do what's in the best interest of their citizens. So that'll be discussed again as part of the plan.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Thank you. I know we're running low on time, but my name is Jerry Wyndham, and I represent a
facilities-based CLEC in North Mississippi. We chose to do our own facility instead of the leasing or renting copper, however you want to do that. But as a competitor, I got a comment and then a question, but I think it's very important to promote competition, especially from the small entities. They can get out into these areas quicker, faster than large companies can. For instance, DSL is not available in Ashland because AT&T put it there. It's because we made application to put it there and then AT&T followed. So I think just keep that kind of thing in mind when you're doing it. And also on the cost, I mean, we all want to drive the cost down, but I also have 29 employees that have to eat as well. So, we have to make it competitive. My question is also the IP4 exhaustion, and what's the government or FCC's look at the IPv6, which I thought was kind of already supposed to happen right now. Okay, thank you.
I'll just say very quickly on the one of the things we're looking at. We certainly would love to have more CLECs enter the market. We think there are a lot of reasons why CLECs have had a tough few years, and if you have some specific ideas about how fair rules of the road could make your ability to compete better, you should tell me either now or send me an email. But as to the IPv6, this has to do with the address. We're running out of internet addresses. IPv6 enables many, many, many billions of more addresses, which we're going to need because the next generation of the internet will also be a machine-to-machine internet. Your washing machine will be connected to the internet. Your refrigerator will be connected to the internet. So there's an ongoing program which I won't bore people with here, but certainly part of it is it demonstrates the power of this technology, and the government has to lead on this one in the same way there was kind of like a Y2K issue where the government has to make sure that everybody is kind of lining up in this way.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hello, how are you?
Well, thank you.
I'm Cedric Devine with the U.S. Department of Labor, Office of Apprenticeship here in Memphis. I'm over 26 counties in western Tennessee. My question to you is, what can we do now in this area to get ready for the jobs that are coming? I know with what you all will be doing, we'll create a lot of jobs. With employment being as high as it is in this area, what can we do now, right now, to get ready for the jobs that are coming? That's my only question.
Maybe some of the panelists can join in on that challenge.
I think it's a topic that we've talked about a lot tonight, and it's education. There's a large percentage of our workforce that we've found across the state that may know a little bit about computers, but when these jobs come and the technology skills that will be required aren't there yet. And particularly through the Department of Labor across the state with the career centers and areas like that, there's a real opportunity to be able to address those 21st century skills that will be needed to help build out this infrastructure and the jobs that are coming.
Just excuse me, as the enforcer, let me tell you, we're going to finish. We're going to let everybody have a chance to comment, but we're going to close the lines where they are now.
Okay. Thank you. Yes, sir.
Hi. Randy Chappell. I'm a former president of the Tennessee Council for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing. The deaf, of course, there's no color there. I don't understand the discussion of the color, considering the communication problems that my constituency has. We've got people from Sri Lanka and everybody here in the Memphis area that needs access to the computer, basically through video relay interpreting or video telephones. There's various companies out there that provide interpreting services for those that use the telephone. It's been piggybacking the internet for all this time, but you have a lot of low-income deaf people who still have no access, yet those that do have access are guaranteed the access because of 911 availability, and that is one of the mandates from FCC, and that's appreciated. I just wanted to remind you of that situation and not to forget the accessibility for that, possibly in some kind of, I don't know, I guess I'd recommend a rebate program or something for something like that. And then I've got a dumb question. Are we trying to change over to public ownership of the internet rather than like I've got a choice of going with cable or AT&T. Okay, that's how I get my DSL or my internet. Now, are we talking about doing something with those companies that are definitely going to be banging on somebody's door going, no, you can't take our profit away? Just a dumb question that the uneducated about this stuff probably has a need to know.
I think the Commissioner and Blair affirmed that, basically how, in terms of this present landscape, how we got here, and that that this plan has, at its core, no desire to upset things from that standpoint. We've got incredible infrastructure, though we ranked 15th, and we want to do what we can in an organized way. That's why Congress said this is a plan that we will deliver to this nation on February 17th to improve upon, it's a blueprint, so to speak, on what we have in terms of private-public partnerships, all of these encouragements to build upon that. There is no trying to upset or government intrusion, none of that. It's just a building and improving on an infrastructure that we're proud of in many ways, but we recognize that needs a bit more tweaking in order to meet the challenges of the day and to come.
I want to say just a word on disabilities, because this is an important priority at the FCC. Our charge from Congress is to develop a plan to get broadband out to everybody, no matter who they are, where they live, or the particular circumstances of their individual lives. I spent a lot of time with the deaf and hard of hearing community, the blind, the deaf and blind. These are folks who want so much to be a productive part of our society. The first speech I gave at the FCC was to a deaf and hard of hearing group, and I said, what's the unemployment rate generally? This is like 7 or 8 years ago amongst the deaf and hard of hearing. And they said it's like 75%. And here I was surrounded by all of these people who had so much ability, and now we have the tools of technology to really help them become productive. It's just like everybody else who has been denied. There's so much opportunity there, but we have to keep our eye on and keep our focus on that priority. And I think you'll see in the plan that's being designed and the plan that will be approved a definite emphasis on disabilities community.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I'm Paul Van Hosen. I'm the director of C Technology, and first I have some consolation for Commissioner Copps. I looked at that list of 15 countries, and it looks like a few of them at least have 1 or 2 phone companies that are totally subsidized by their governments, and they're about the state of New Jersey. So I think our challenges are far broader than that. I don't think we're going to end up with a situation where we're going to see the internet return to a public ownership, but I think we're way far down the road for that. Given that our organization, and I'll give you my background real quick, I was the co-founder and chief technology officer of Education Networks of America. I'm quite familiar with the E-rate program and the benefits of the Universal Service Fund. And for the gentleman that was worried about the federal budget and who's going to pay for this, the Universal Service Fund is probably one of the thriving successes of the federal government. It is not funded by Congress. God forbid that ever should happen. The Universal Service Fund, in the E-rate program in particular, provides an incredible benefit to every public school in this country, and the FCC should be applauded for the way that's been executed. My comments tonight here are focused on, first of all, our current work. We are working with Minnie Baumer and the Delta, or the Mississippi Delta Regional Caucus, the Tennessee chapter anyway, on West Tennessee. We have pilots working with all 3 of the federal development districts out here. We're focused on rural economic development through broadband, actual online job creation, and innovative broadband deployment methods. Work quite closely with Michael Ramage in Connected Tennessee in a rollout here in West Tennessee that linked private providers leveraging data that we got out of the school system. The other area that here I would like to speak about is how the national plan is being addressed. Broadband is very different than the challenges we had with the REA, with the rural electrification, or with even good old plain old telephone service. And what I'm wondering is, are we shifting our thinking from just talking about infrastructure to actual applications and how that's going to be addressed, number one. And obviously we have a massive issue with rural broadband deployment, and specifically, as we mentioned, the minority communities here are, in the Delta regions anyway, I would say represent a huge chunk of that disadvantage. I was wondering if the Federal Communications Commission is considering a similar massive REA type of effort to fix the Delta regions in particular.
Blair?
As to your first question about applications, you can see where we're going by going to broadband.gov. And if you look at the September meeting where we did a big presentation to the Commission, and the November meeting where we did another one, what you'll see is we're looking at this whole kind of what you might think of as the ecosystem: networks, devices, applications, and adoption. All of those things drive the others. And the more activity there is in any one, the better off the whole is. So it's not just about networks. We are looking at, for example, how can government use its data to help create applications that make it more relevant for people. So yeah, we are looking at that, though. Obviously, that's something where there's been an awful lot of private activity as well that's very, very valuable. The question of how we get broadband to places where it isn't. Primarily, we're going to rely on private forces, but the universal service is that mechanism which provides an incentive for private forces to build, and I think there have to be some very significant changes. I agree with you, it has been a success as well as the E-rate, but we're going to have to transform universal service to focus it on broadband. I don't know that there's going to be a kind of new government agency in charge of delivering it. Rather, I think it'll probably work through existing agencies.
Thank you. Sir?
Yeah. I'm Major Jim Harvey with Memphis Police Department. Wink was just telling y'all a little bit about what one of our plans is. We're working with Memphis Light, Gas, and Water, the parks, libraries. We want to try to extend wireless broadband out to the city's parks and other areas where people can come in and get connectivity, but also to extend wireless connectivity for law enforcement, fire, EMA, and try to reduce the cost to the citizens. We're spending hundreds of thousands of dollars every year on broadband connectivity for the city for law enforcement agencies. And what I'd like to know from you guys is, are there any other grant opportunities available besides BIP and BTOP?
Well, first of all, I want to just say that BTOP is being administered by a different government agency. We're not the decision makers on that one, so I don't know what the status is, though. The first round will be announced, I believe, Thursday, and then there'll be a second round. There are a number of different things. Actually, when I was at the Commission the first time, one of the things we did, recognizing the potential of this for public safety, we helped assure that police departments received spectrum as part of the digital television transition. There's a big question which the Commission will have to address about how to make sure that those networks get built out. And with that comes the question of how do you finance? And we have a lot of people working very hard trying to figure that out. It is not an easy thing to do. There have been several efforts to make sure that spectrum is utilized and that a network is built out. They have not succeeded so far. But we will be rolling that out, and hopefully we'll come up with a plan that works this time.
Thank you. Yes, ma'am.
My name is Vera Tate. I'm from Millington, Tennessee, and my main concern is affordability. Excuse me. To get online now, you have to afford the equipment, and I want to know, will this plan provide any subsidy for the people that cannot afford the equipment for online? Blair?
There is a program with the FCC today that makes sure that telephones are affordable for everyone. And if you are at a certain income level where you can't afford it, there's a program where you can get help getting the telephone and getting the telephone service. We think we need to transform that plan so that it takes care of broadband. And if we're successful, there will be such a program at certain income levels. There are other things we're trying to do, and this goes to the question of competition. that would help use competitive forces in the marketplace to reduce the cost. One of the things, we've done very extensive studies, and one of the ironic things is in wealthier communities, broadband can often be cheaper because more people are offering the service there. So one of the things we're trying to do is figure out how we get more competition in areas so that folks who maybe don't meet those income levels, maybe they make more money, but it's still more affordable because there's more of a competitive dynamic.
Thank you. Yes, sir.
Great. I have a similar question to the young woman from Millington over there. My name's Don Janes, and I'm from rural Brighton. I'm a computer consultant, so I'm an advocate of technology. And I think extending broadband services to rural areas as well as providing equal access to this important resource is a great idea. My concern is many low-income homes, as mentioned by Ms. Taylor, can't afford simple telephone service. So what would be affordable when it comes to broadband? And then is the FCC, I think that this the lady from Millington also asked, is the FCC planning to subsidize this service? Possibly, and I guess I could be mistaken, with the Universal Services Fund. I don't know if that was the fund that you were referring to just a minute ago.
That's part of it, yes.
And then also, is it your intent to provide affordable computers or access devices to the broadband services too?
Yeah. First of all, let me just say I'm just a staff guy. I've been working with a couple hundred people trying to pull together a lot of information, tee up policy choices for the Commission, for Congress, and for others. All of those ideas are on the table. All of them have pros. All of them have cons. No one should make any mistake here about we cannot figure out how to turn straw into gold. So everything comes with a price, and if you decide to support the device, that's less money to support the service. And trying to figure out what's the most effective way to get the most people on is a bit of a challenge. But I would say we are looking very carefully at what is a way of we think that the Universal Service Program for telephone has worked fairly well. It means that in excess of 96, 97, 98% of Americans are on. It's not going to be 100 because some people simply don't want it. But fundamentally, any American, no matter what their income level, can either afford the service, or if they can't afford it, it's provided incredibly cheaply. And that's kind of the model that we want to create. There's a lot of differences, and the point that you're pointing to is the cost of the device. The computer is more expensive than a phone. But there's also a device literacy component. It's not complicated to learn how to use a phone. Learning how to use a computer is a different deal. So the question of how you balance the need for the education, the device subsidy, the service subsidy, these are all things we're trying to figure out and we'll be rolling out over the next few months.
May I ask a brief follow-on question?
Brief.
Please. It was mentioned that the Universal Services Fund was not funded by Congress.
Correct.
Can you tell me who funds that?
Yeah, consumers, if you look at your phone bill.
There's a line.
Oh, okay.
There's a line on your, one of the 20 to 30 lines on your telephone bill. You will see that.
Wonderful. Thank you.
Thank you for your support of that. Okay. Yes, sir.
Yes, good evening. My name is Minister DeAndre Brown. I am the Executive Director of Lifeline to Success, an ex-offender reentry program here in the city. My question goes to those that are incarcerated. Are there any plans to train them on what broadband is for the adoption piece? Because what happens when they come to us, they've never seen a computer. So now they see a computer, there's nothing for us to train them, maybe a standardized training or any incentive to help us to be able to teach them because they've never seen a computer before. Are there any plans for anything of that nature?
It's interesting. One of the, I guess probably at the September meeting, one of the things I threw out way out of order because, sometimes I don't know order, sometimes I ignore order, is just that there is a community that is of need, that is vulnerable, that just like you said, depending on their length of sentence, that they might have missed a whole series of introductions to the world. So I don't know if there's any. I know that's a challenge, Blair.
Yeah, it's a particular challenge because I think there's a lot of prison officials who fear that training and giving access will mean there's also certain kind of communications that you don't want. So I don't. I think it's a really hard question, and we're facing a lot of hard questions. So if you'll indulge us, we haven't really focused on that. I'll be very candid with you. I think it's a really good question. I've also seen some studies, by the way, that suggest a key predictor of someone being successful once they get outside again is retaining contact with family and loved ones. And boy, the internet is sure a great way to do that. But I think that that's something that's frankly beyond what we're going to do on this one. But I hope, hopefully, there'll be some further studies that, or further plans that figure out the right way of getting it done.
And please to affirm that this plan, this blueprint, is but a beginning. So it's not the end of a process. So please, Minister, if you would keep in touch, so to speak. It's easy to do, assuming you have access. And we would look to hear from you. Yes, sir, to my left.
Yeah, hi. I'm David Malik, just computer user. And first, I don't agree that everything that the government puts their hands on is a failure. Most of you are very hard workers, and I appreciate your service. The Internet itself was created by the federal government. I think it was part of the DARPA project. My only complaint is that the government did not charge or take the money, maybe a penny a page, I don't know, and build the infrastructure for those those underserved communities. Maybe we can go and retroactively do that now. But in any case, it is no secret why the private sector doesn't get involved in the digital divide. It is not profitable for them to do so. Their investment is more profitable in high-density populated areas. In 2001, I believe it was, Michael Powell, your former chairman, made a dismissive statement that in reaction to the digital divide by saying that there is indeed, maybe there's a Mercedes divide as well. Were any of you guys on that commission when he made that statement?
I was not on the commission.
Okay.
But can I say something about that? That's interesting. Yeah, I know Michael.
Oh, okay.
Michael and I have disagreed about a lot of things over time. But I would say that I think he is actually working very hard now with a group called Broadband for America.
That scares me. That really scares me. I mean,
well, I think
a guy that says there's a Mercedes divide, and because he can't afford his Mercedes, therefore we should have a computer. That scares me.
Yeah, but what I'm saying is I think he thinks he made a mistake, and I think he's working hard to change that.
Oh, okay. Well,
look, I've said a lot of things when I was at the commission 20 years ago.
Okay.
He said a lot of things last week. But
I said a lot of things last week. I probably said something tonight. But the point is, he is actually working hard now to try to increase adoption. So I can't imagine that he still agrees with that statement.
Well, I like General Powell a lot better. Let me just say that. His father.
Yeah, I know his father. They're good people.
Well, this has cost the country a great amount of time, and what I was hoping to find here today was some clarity.
Yep.
In regards to 8-9 years later, what's the process? What's the plan? And quite frankly, I don't think I've gotten that. No. I was recently pricing some mobile broadband for my own use. Mm-hmm. And I was participating in a forum, and I was asking people what they thought was the best service, yada, yada, yada. And this guy from Denmark said that, and they were talking about the price. He said, my mobile broadband is $20 per month, unlimited. My DSL is $20 per month in my home. This is 8 years later, and still there's not much clarity here for me. Last, I think one of the things you guys need to look at is the system requirements that Microsoft, for Vista 7, I think they have another situation where you can go with lower hardware. But that effectively raises the cost of the hardware for people to get on the Internet, in which access to the Internet via hardware doesn't require as much power as desktop applications. So you're forcing people, when they buy new computers, to pay much more than they actually need if most of the stuff they do is on the Internet, unless they're process-intensive, or hardware-intensive type of programming. Most people don't do that. Most people aren't doing surgery over the Internet. Okay?
Thank goodness.
And what's happening now, and I'm hoping that Google wins this, it's a software as a service, such that it's being, the actual applications are on somebody else's servers, and all you do is visit a server, basically. And that would mean a great amount to the rural and the underserved areas as well. And one other thing, I think that it would be very important for you guys to look at Linux as well. I just recently started looking at it, forced to, because of what Vista was doing for the people that I serve. Because I don't think they should have to pay, you know, $500, $1,000. They can get a refurbished computer for much less and do most of the things that all of them want to do.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes, ma'am.
Can I just mention
Of
that
course.
the CEO of Red Hat, which is the largest provider of Linux services, is coming in to see us, I think, next week to try to talk about the relationship between open source and what we're doing. So we're focused on that, too.
Great. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, my name is Sarah Hadsky, and I am an architect, a buildings kind of architect, not a computer architect, which seems to be of the essence in a crowd like this. I recently moved my sole proprietorship practice from University of Memphis area to Southeast Shelby County, and I suddenly discovered that, guess what? There are pockets of Shelby County and Memphis that broadband and DSL are not a commodity. I could get cable. They would charge me $5,000 to run a line. They didn't want to do ISDN, even though there was an ISDN box. I could not get DSL, beg, borrow, or steal it over the last 2.5 years. I was one of the first people to get an VDO card. That worked for a whole year, and then suddenly, inexplicably, it no longer worked. Sprint said, "I'm sorry, we don't know. We haven't moved the tower." I said, "Well, I hadn't moved the house." Didn't work. So now I am using satellite, which costs a whole lot more than DSL for half the speed. Fair access policy means I can't do downloads and computer updates when I need to. In my field of architecture, it used to be, even 5 years ago, the internet was not near as necessary as it is now. Now every building supplier, every product manufacturer, if you ask them for a catalog, they'll gladly send you one, but almost every other inquiry is answered with, "It's online. You need to go online." If I want to bid on a project in the city of Memphis or Shelby County or any other government entity, I need to go online, and I need to look up the bid proposals online. Do you know how long that takes at 20 kilobytes per second? And when people in my professional circle ask me, "Did you get that email?" and I say things like, "When I first moved to that new house," well, it's still downloading. It's been 4 hours, but I'm quite certain when I get to email 186, I will be happy to read it at 2 a.m.
Who's your phone provider?
Who's my
phone provider?
Phone provider is AT&T, and they have no interest in running DSL to that particular house. It is a pocket legacy, I guess, because if you look around...
It's interesting. AT&T actually gets very little of the Universal Service Fund, and AT&T actually controls more phone lines that have not been upgraded to broadband than any other company. And that has to do with the way universal service works. It's not designed to fund broadband, it was designed to fund phone service. And so that's why one of the things we're trying to look at is how do you redesign the system. That $7 billion a year is not flowing to make sure that DSL goes to those areas. And that's part of the structural problem, and it's an historical problem that we're facing. So it's not surprising.
Right.
There are a lot of other people who are on that boat.
That's what I discovered. And so I wanted to see if there was a plan to address that pocket problem. And we also deal a lot in rural areas, too. And, I mean, it's a huge issue of how you get, because satellite is not comparable to broadband.
That's true today. Some satellite guys are saying that it will be. We're a little bit skeptical because of the laws of physics, but the thing to know, I mean, we're very cognizant that I think it's about AT&T and Verizon and Qwest have about 84% of the lines in the country that have not been upgraded, and they only receive about 16% of the relevant fund. So figuring out how to rejigger that to give them an incentive to upgrade those, that's part of what we're challenged with.
They don't care. And they have a list that you can sign up on. They won't ever call you back. I'm just letting you know.
No. I completely understand. And as somebody said earlier, I mean, the businesses, it's not that they don't care. They can't figure out how to make money doing it. Now, there are some things that can be done, but that's why universal service exists, is to fund those areas where you can't make money otherwise.
Right, and I would have been willing to pay for the connection. I mean, the cable guys would do it for $5,000.
Yeah.
You know, there's got to be a middle ground.
Thank you. Thank you for that. Yes, sir.
My name is Marvell Mitchell, and I'm in the computer business, and I want to thank you all for coming. A couple things, though, I'd like to kind of discuss or have you all discuss. Number one, we're talking about education, and I think that's important. I really do. We're talking about accessibility, I think is key. When you start talking about the availability to have computers or not, I think that's kind of nebulous. In other words, if you build an expressway and I don't have an exit to get on, whether I got a computer, whether I have all the knowledge, whether I have all the money in the world, I still can't get on. My neighborhood will not allow it. What I think from a strategic perspective we need to do, everybody knows who Henry Ford is. Very few people know who Mark Zuckerberg is. And I think we need to offer our kids the opportunity to have access to high-speed internet in a big way. I think we need to do it as government, as a personal citizen. You know, in 2010, which we're approaching, to say we've got pockets that don't have high-speed internet, it's almost deplorable. It's kind of like somebody's been asleep at the switch. You know, what have we been doing? How are we going to afford it? We can afford to do everything else we want to. We're taxpayers. That's how we afford to do it. We pay taxes. We have that little line item on our bill which funds this thing. I think now what you guys are looking for, I think, is for us to kind of say, hey, we need this. We really want to have this. There's always been tax incentives. There's always been tax rebates. There's all kind of incentives to incentivize companies to do what we want them to do, but also there needs to be some penalties if they don't. I've looked at it from a state level, and we've had companies come in and pick up a whole lot of money in terms of tax abatements and that kind of thing, and they've agreed to do this, but necessarily have not gotten around to it. And in 2010, we kind of got to get around to it. And if we can't get around to it, then there needs to be some teeth involved in it to make it a little bit more painful than it has been in the past. Now, we can argue, okay, rural, urban, okay. The fact of the matter is, if we take the blinders off, those are the two areas that we don't have high-speed access. We got to get it. I mean, you know, when we talk, we can talk about it, we can argue about whether it's black or white, it's poor, whatever. It's irrelevant. If we do not offer our kids and grandkids the opportunity to make the kind of money that I saw Mark Zuckerberg make, who, by the way, is the guy who invented Facebook, or the guys who invented MySpace, or some guy who did a software package in his garage and just happened to become a gazillionaire, then we're basically saying to our kids that you don't have access to this expressway. I don't care whether you have a Mercedes, a Hoopty, or a Ford, or you don't have a car at all. When you can get it, the technology is being driven down. Prices of computers are becoming lower and lower. We got pocket PCs now. I mean, we got Blackberries. I mean, phones are computers. It doesn't make any difference. I think from a strategic perspective, as the FCC, as I look at it now, and I could be wrong, we got to be able to offer this expressway entrance to all Americans, not just some. Regardless to whoever you are, it's a basic fundamental right that we as taxpayers need to have and ought to have. So, you know, I don't want to vehemently disagree about we don't have computers. When I started selling computers before, a personal computer was $2,000. Now you can buy a personal computer for $200. So the economies of scale are going to drive it down. I think if you incentivize people, people will rush to it, and the general American business will figure out a way to make money in it, because they figured out a way to go to Germantown, Bartlett, and some of the other counties, Brentwood and Nashville and other places, because that's where the money is. However, these same folks who take our tax dollars, who we give these tax dollars to, I think we need to figure out a way to give it to people in New Chicago, Scutterfield, and other areas around Memphis and other pockets of Memphis, and in the rural areas where there's only a few people. We figured it out with utilities. We figured it out with the expressway. I'm not big on government involvement, but I play by the rules. You guys set the rules. And I think we're here strategically to ask you guys to set the rules so that there's incentives to do it, but also a little bit of teeth if you don't. And if it's a strategic point, which I think it needs to be in terms of education, as in terms of access, and our future billionaires, I hate to use that term, or millionaires, you're not going to be able to make a decent living unless you have access to the internet. I mean, you just won't be able to do it. You won't come up with the next big idea. You will not be able to come up with Facebook or any other social network. Or you may not be able to research a paper or look at anything on the internet if you just got dial-up. So you guys were the tokens. Figure this out. We're behind.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Okay. I know we're winding down to the last few minutes. Thank you so much for being so patient. You really, really, my heart is filled tonight. Want to thank a couple of people before we dismiss the National Civil Rights Museum, Mayors Wharton and Ford for their presence and their staffs. Of course, Dr. Hooks, I can't say enough. Congressman Steve Cohen and his staff for all of their support. The Minority Media and Telecommunications Committee and the Free Press, please raise your hand. They were responsible for getting the word out. Thank you so much. Of course, couldn't do it without you. The Memphis Public Library for their exhibit and for the tour today. All of the exhibitors, please, before you walk out, before you leave, and attendees, the panelists today, and let me recognize the FCC staff. Will you come in and raise your hands, jump up and down, all of that? Kyle, Kayla, Celeste, Khaki, Jeff, and let me recognize specifically Karen Johnson. She's your home girl if you didn't know that. Karen and her parents, hopefully they're still here. There's Mom. Dad might have taken the car out. But want to thank all of them for the support. 1 minute, Representative. We've got to go.
Commissioner, thank all of y'all as well. And this actually concludes, obviously, the piece, but I could not allow y'all to leave without talking about television stations and these conglomerate radio stations around the country and how all of them are buying up all the mom and pop radio stations, controlling and disseminating propaganda that is actually so antiseptic that we don't really know what's going on. I think we need to look at that as well. And the other thing for me would be good is that we need to, the programming itself, some of the programming on TV is very ignorant. It's really silly stuff. It's a waste of time to sit there and watch some of this stuff. The quality of the programming needs to be elevated. And we really need to look at that if at some point, because I can't stand to watch it.
Representative, you have a couple of broadcasters in the audience. They may or may not raise your hand at that point. One is leaning against the wall. Yes, I did out you. So why don't you talk to them and they're, the eyes and ears of the major networks. And let me recognize Roger Goldblatt, who is celebrating a birthday today. Thank you for working so hard on his on your birthday, Roger. And Rick Kaplan is my legal advisor. He happens to be celebrating a birthday today. I might need him tomorrow, so I wanted to recognize that. And before we dismiss, I wanted to give Commissioner Copps and Blair, if you had any closing words for the audience today.
I've just got two. It's thank you. This has been a really great meeting, and we've learned a lot.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Memphis and surrounding areas. Take care. See you next time.